24 hours of mourning do we then come out and celebrate the fact that we have an Independence Day, and that's our Independence Day. So that's what we had just completed. Thankfully, after that, last Thursday morning, we opened up the country, so to speak. It was our kind of first day after lockdown. A few schools have started today. We feel as a country that we're starting to come out of this. We have, thankfully, in the last several days, well under 100 people who have been diagnosed with COVID, and the numbers are dropping each day. And we're cautiously optimistic that we'll have schools open soon. We're starting with, I believe, outdoor restaurants and some outdoor, even other businesses have opened up. But restaurants will be opening that have outdoor patio space, hotels and simmers that have one floor or no elevators. We're starting with that. So little by little, we have a 4-phase approach that is currently underway, which will slowly be rolled out, I believe, over the next month, if all the numbers stay well. So we're cautiously optimistic, and I hope that the same really will be the same for all of you. On a personal level, I know that many of you know I've been dealing with COVID with my own family at home, my parents. And just to kind of bring you up to date, my mom has now tested negative, and she is in rehab. And my father, who tested positive, is actually 100% asymptomatic, and we're just waiting for the results. So I feel very lucky, very blessed, and I know, I'm really one of the parents are really quite lucky. It's quite miraculous. So I thank you all for your prayers that you've been sending over the last month, and it's much appreciated. So today. We are, just before we get started, I wanted to let you know we're expanding. We're working on expanding these educational sessions to include more on-site sessions as we're getting to the point where we're going to be able to go out, and we're going to be looking at cultures. We're going to be looking at traditions. We're going to be looking at many other sites. And in the next few days, we'll be providing a calendar that we'll share with you of future classes that we hope you'll join. We know personally, how challenging this period is for everyone, obviously for Itamar and for myself, and for everybody here. I'm sure everyone's, been touched by this in one way or the other, and certainly in terms of work, and we all really hope it'll pass soon. If you do find that this tour is meaningful, or any of the previous ones, we do, ask and hope that maybe you will consider supporting our initiative, and you can PayPal us at this right here, PayPal me at Traveluia. If at the end of this you find that it's something that's meaningful, we obviously very much appreciate that. I want to start the session today with Lindsay, who is supposed to be here on a tour actually right now. She's going to give us a blessing before we move over to Itamar and learn about what's happening with Caesarea. Lindsay.
Thank you so much. All right, Lord, we just come to you today from all corners of the earth, Father. And Lord, as Elisa has just said, everyone just read the Hallel Psalms. And in Psalm 117, Lord, it says, "Oh, praise the Lord, all you nations. Praise him, all you peoples, for his loving kindness is great toward us, and the truth of the Lord is forever." Hallelujah. And Lord, we all come together and we praise you, Father, and thank you. And thank you so much, Lord, that Israel is coming out of this quarantine time, Lord, and that you are blessing that land. We ask that you continue to bless Elisa's family, heal her parents totally, Lord. Thank you and praise you for the healing that's been done, Father. And Lord, we just ask you to bless her business, Father. She has been brought through her life and given the skills directed by you, Lord, to build this business, to bring people from all over the world to this land. And we pray for blessings for this company, for Itamar as he's teaching us today. And we just thank you for all that are on this call, Lord. If any are sick or they're financially troubled, Father God, we ask that you touch that issue and bless them, Lord. And Lord, I pray you will open our eyes and our understanding as Itamar is teaching, Father. Thank you so much, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to introduce you all to Itamar Ben David. Itamar is a good friend, an amazing partner, and lives in Jerusalem and has been guiding for well over 10 years and has been a real partner in putting together these virtual tours. And I'm sure today's is going to be amazing as well. So to you, Itamar.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay, for your words. And guys, I'm going to be today a bit megalomaniac, kind of like King Herod. And I'm trying to do something that is probably beyond our time frame and beyond my knowledge. But sometimes it's needed to broaden our view, just to look at things in a broader perspective, so can understand three different cultures, I would say: the Romans, the Christians, and the Jews over the last 2,000 years. So although Caesarea is the location of our discussion, the one thing that I'm not really interested in talking about too much is Caesarea per se, like the actual city. And I'll explain what I mean. The themes that I'm going to focus on are two. I call this tour Caesarea, Caesarea, Rome, the West, and the Jews. That's how I called it. And what I want to show you is how the context, the historical context of Caesarea and what was going on from Caesarea, the Roman invasion to Judea, militarily, politically, but for most, I think, culturally, that's basically what triggered later on the revolts of the Jews against the Romans that ended very badly for the Jews. I just remind you, my beard, I mentioned that between Passover and the Jewish Pentecost, Shavuot, basically for the first 33 days, we don't shave our beards, again, because of the thousands of rabbis and altogether 600,000 Jews. About 40% of the Jews in Judea were killed by the Romans during the second revolt of the Jews against the Romans. So it was absolutely a tragic and devastating a moment in the Jewish history, and the true beginning of the Jewish exile that ended, like Elisa mentioned, the Independence Day last week. It only ended in 1948. In the national anthem of the Jews, Hatikva, the hope, that's how it's called. We have a saying over there. The Hatikva, the hope, is 2,000 years old. Okay, that's a part of the national anthem. So where's these 2,000 years old? Where is these 2,000 years come from? It comes from what was happening in Judea 2,000 years ago. Okay, so it's very important to contextualize it. The Independence Day is not just a random Independence Day. It's the hopes of generations of Jews that hope to be back and be the sovereign power in their homeland for almost 2,000 years. So that's, again, the context. This is one theme. Again, I want to show you how the clash, I would say, of civilizations between the Jews and the Romans affected the entire region. That's number one. And number two, I want to show you as Westerners, in a way, I consider myself someone that grew up, on American television. So I don't know if I live in the West or not. Okay, but Israel is a modern, westernized society. I grew up on Seinfeld. That's how I know English so well, I think. So my idea, guys, is for people who live in the West, people who consider themselves Westerners, I'm talking mainly about Europe, America, Australia, and others. Okay, the West is deeply connected to Rome. Okay, in ways and undercurrents, I would say, that I will try to expose now in the sense of Caesarea. So this is, again, these two themes: the clash between the Jews and the Romans, and the connection, the deep connection between Rome and the West. That's how I'm going to manage this visit. With us today, my friend Amir Aloni. Okay, he works in the Nature and Parks Authority in Israel. You're also a great photographer. So I'm going to start with a video from a drone that Amir shot a few years ago. So that's the video of Caesarea. Let me just pause it for just 1 second. Just 1 second. Many issues here for some reason. Just 1 second. Let me open it properly. Yes. Okay. Very good. So what we're going to do now, I just want to show you all of Caesarea, the site. Maybe some of you are familiar with. I will just show you the different places we're going to talk about. We're going to be at. And then I will just say a few words about the history of the site. Then we can dive in. So these are the walls of Caesarea from Crusaders' time. Over here, take a look at this. You can see the church. See that? Just over here. Is the remains of a Crusaders' church just over here. Let me just go back a little bit. This is the port of Caesarea right over here. Let's continue. Just to give you a glance of it, this is the Hippodrome. Horse races, okay, took place over here 2,000 years ago. We're gonna see the Herodian Palace over here. You see that? He had an infinity pool, by the way, okay, just over here. Again, the port of Caesarea, it was massive. It was a real high-tech project. The piers actually stretched 500 meters, 1,500 feet into the water. So this is, again, the storerooms, bathhouse, just over here, different storerooms, different remains. It's a fabulous site, really, one of the most preserved Roman cities that we have in this region, and the historical significance of it is huge. So just back to the port over here, you can see this is like the wave breaker over here. It actually goes further into the Mediterranean, okay, altogether about 500 meters, which is 1,500 feet into the water. We can see the foundations underneath in maritime archaeology and from aerial footages, but today that's what's left of it after after all the earthquakes and wars, etc. You can see the theater right over here. We're going to visit it as well. Again, the storerooms. This is the bathhouse over here. This is the public bathhouse just over here. The Hippodrome seats, the cardo, okay. We'll see that again, don't worry. Storerooms, more storerooms in this area. What you see here, these walls that you see, that you just saw, let me just go back a little bit. This is actually from Crusaders' time. I won't talk at all about the Crusaders. And but this is again what it is. I'm muting everyone. Elisa, whenever you want to talk, or guys, if you want to chat with me, if you want to say something, just write in the chat box. Elisa will monitor it and will answer everything, absolutely every question. We invite you. Okay, yeah, just the lovely views of Caesarea. Okay, the different parts of it. Let's let it run a little more. Again, the Hippodrome. We saw the theater, the Hippodrome, the cardo. Yeah, again, that's the city. Okay, so a wedding. Okay, it's a very popular wedding area. So thank you very much, Amir, for sharing this. And this is probably the only video that I'm going to do. Yes, so someone commented, it's much bigger than I realized. Okay. So there you go. Elisa, it is recorded, so don't worry. I have it recorded and there shouldn't be any problems. Good. So Caesarea, when you visit Caesarea, which now, specifically now you can't, but when you will visit Caesarea, there are a few stops. Definitely if you do it with me, there are a few stops, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop almost in every stop. Probably I'll be shorter towards the end, but in every stop, I will try to demonstrate again what we were discussing. Let me just get a few more people in. The first stop will be statues. The amount of statues and sculptures that were in Caesarea is absolutely enormous, and this is what they found after 2,000 years. I'm talking about a huge city with that was destroyed at some point in history, but we still find a lot of these artifacts. So I want to start with this particular foot just over here. And I'll just say that in Greek and Roman art, it was used not just to beautify the city, it's also a part of the, as you probably know, a part of the worship, okay? Worship all the different gods. And to worship all the different gods. And when King Herod built Caesarea, although he is Jewish, okay, he built a pagan city. Okay, he built a pagan city. Now, just to give you the context of Caesarea, he built it in the last quarter of the 1st century BC. He named it Caesarea after Augustus Caesar, which became his patron. The context of how Augustus Caesar came to power, there was a struggle between him and Mark Antony, who is going to rule the empire after Julius Caesar. And in the Battle of Actium, Mark Antony was defeated. He killed himself. Cleopatra killed herself. You maybe remember the movies. And Augustus became the ruler of Rome, the actual Caesar. So at this point, Herod, that supported Mark Antony, had to get himself this new patron. So he goes to Rome. Everyone thought that he will just be killed, but Herod convinced him to leave him in power, in Judea. Herod ruled in Judea since 37 BC, and 10 years later, he has to go to Rome to explain that he will be loyal to Augustus Caesar. He got what he wanted. Augustus left him in his position, and in return, Herod built this massive city in the honor of Caesar. Now, the purpose of Caesarea is one important thing: the port. The port is what's important about the city. He basically wanted to take over the commerce in the eastern side of the Mediterranean. I'll just remind you that in the Mediterranean, definitely back then, you can't just take your boat and sail in the open sea. No one does that. Okay, the ships were always near the. They were always sailing near the coasts, and if you have a good port, you can make a lot of money out of the taxes, and this was the intention of Herod. So he built a pagan city in the honor of Caesar and the Capitolinian gods, and there were lots of sculptures because of that over there. It was mainly a pagan city. There were Jews living there, but they were a minority over there. So about the sculptures, I'll just say that it is forbidden, as we know, in the 10 Commandments. We must not have any graven image. Okay, that's the 2nd commandment. And there is only one God, so not multiple gods like the Romans and the Greeks, the Greek mythology, but only one God that doesn't have any shape and definitely not any image. Okay, that's the first and the 2nd commandments. Now about these sculptures, I want to show you something from a different time period, and you will be familiar with it, I'm sure. I'll just share my screen. Take a look. Okay, you are familiar with David by Michelangelo in Florence. So although it's from the Renaissance, it's like 500 years old, it is when he sculptured it, he did it in the same standards like the Romans and the Greeks. So first, it's a naked young man. Okay, how much the Greeks and the Romans adored youth. Okay, in a way, you can look at the Western world as we know it today, admiring the youth. In a way, people always try to hide their age. They don't put it on Facebook. When they celebrate their birthdays, they don't really tell their age. Okay, this is a chronic problem, the way I see it, in this Western concept of ageism. Okay, it's a thing. So why is that? Why the West adored the youth, again, it's coming from the Greek mythology. The gods never die. They are young and beautiful forever. Okay, this is again these subconscious currents of the culture. Now, at the same time, the Jews have the very different concept of the time and the age. It's actually, the older you are, the more respected you are. Okay, so this is coming, for example, from the commandment, the fifth. Just one second. The commandment to honor your parents, right? You should honor your parents. So it says this: honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God gives thee. Okay, so the idea is that you should respect the elders. You should even admire and adore the elders because they hold something that you don't have. So the older you get, actually, the wiser you get, the more honorable you get. So I'm not saying that it doesn't exist in the Western world. I'm just saying that there is still a huge emphasis on youth. Okay, so people are obsessed with that. You can think about even just the fashion, how people dressed up, older people dressed up today. For example, they try to show themselves as young. So this is just as a few examples. Another thing about specifically the David, and sorry about that, guys, but I have to focus, to zoom in to his genital. He has a foreskin. So I just remind you that King David, as an Israelite, he got circumcised. Okay, so this is something unheard of in the Roman world, to be circumcised. Okay, when they came to Judea and they learned about this barbaric act of the Jews to circumcise an 8 days old son, their 8 days old boys, their sons, they thought the Jews are absolutely barbaric and disgusting. Now, why is that? This is a very different concept that the Jews have compared to the Romans. The Romans basically saw that as a barbaric act. Okay, you basically like almost castrating the baby. Okay, the human body is perfect, it's beautiful as it is. We should develop it with sports and being an athlete. Okay, that's the kind of thing they admired. Whereas in Judaism, we have to correct our body, and in the same way, we have to correct the world. Okay, it's called, I mentioned this concept in one of the last tours in Jerusalem, tikkun, to repair. We have to repair the world. So our body is not perfect. We have to do something about our body as well, and about the world as well. So when we do that, we basically participate in God's creation, and then we elevate the world. So there's a very, very different concept between, again, Rome and the Romans and the Jews. Having said that, the Romans absolutely hated the idea of circumcision, but they respected things that are old. And because the Jews preserved old traditions, ancient traditions, they said, okay, let them do their barbaric thing. So this is few things that I said about the sculptures. I'll just say that there are, again, many, many sculptures over there. For example, these two, there are many others. And if you look carefully, you'll see that they don't have any heads, okay? The other one in the front, you can't see that in this picture, but you'll have to believe me, it doesn't have any heads. So although the Jews, according to the second commandment, are not allowed to have any images or any sculptures, the Jews are not the one that broke it. Only in the 7th century, when the Muslims took over the land here, they started to destroy all it's called iconoclasm. Okay, they basically crushed and smashed these sculptures, again, because it's God, Allah, okay, Allah also must not have any image. So this is something that is culturally similar. So this is about the sculptures. Let's continue. In Caesarea, they also found Christian sculptures from the Byzantine era, such as this lamb, the Lamb of God. I won't say much about it, but this is the Christian phase of Caesarea. Like the rest of the Roman world, Rome converted to Christianity officially during the 4th century, and since then, Caesarea also became a Christian city. Let's go now to the theater. Okay, so this is the theater. I will take you now a bit inside. Where is that? Okay, so that's, we still use that. It's not amphitheater, it's a theater. Theater is half circle, semicircle. And amphitheater is a full circle. That's just to differ this from Colosseum or other facilities of entertainment. Okay, this is called a theater. That's just to be accurate about it. Now, that's how the theater looks like. I will show you one last picture from the stage so you can see the back. Okay, these are the seats. So this theater will fit about 4,000 people at the time, and some suggested there was another row of seats made of woods, and it actually was much, much larger, almost 9,000 people. So this is, again, the estimated numbers. Today, we still use that for live shows. So, so today, about 3,000 people could fit in. That's the theater, again, in Caesarea. So what about the theater? Entertainment is huge, both in Rome and today in the West. When you think about the slogan for it is bread and games, or bread and circuses. Okay, that's how they entertain the people. In a way, it was not the way we do it today. Like you pay a ticket for a ticket, you stay for 2 hours, and then you go home. First, you don't have to pay. Okay, it's free. It's free. There was always a sponsor that paid for the whole thing. I'll give you an example. King Herod himself was a sponsor of one of the Olympics. And during that time, when we sponsored one of the Olympics, I can't remember, it was in Asia Minor, if I remember correctly. When he sponsored that, he came up with the idea to have the not just the first, the one that come in first in whatever competition. He got the, let's call it the medal, the gold medal. He came up with the idea to give a prize to the second and the third as well. Okay, so silver medal and bronze medal was Herod's invention. Okay, just that's how important these sponsors were. Okay, and Herod was a very, very famous sponsor for these kinds of occasions. So the theater, the whole idea of entertainment, this is something that was emphasized. And again, you don't pay for the ticket, you get paid. You also get food, popcorn, okay, or hot dogs. Back then they got something different. You get bread, but they also stay for the whole day, and sometimes for the whole week, and in some cases for a month, and sometimes for 3 months. That's how long these games and entertainment took, okay? So it's not just, it's like a festival that lasts forever, okay? So that's, in different parts of the Roman world, that's how it worked. And of course, the sponsors were popular, and everyone loved them, and they could get better positions in politics. Sounds familiar, maybe? Okay, you are sponsoring something, and then you become a politician, you become loved by the public. So this is just as an example. About the shows themselves, tragedy, comedy, okay, all the, I don't know about romantic comedy, but these are all genres that we are familiar with. So this is just as an example of the actors in the backstage. Only male actors, by the way, no female no actresses were allowed. If there was a women role, a man dressed up like a woman would do that role. So that's how it worked in the theater. About specifically the theater in Caesarea, we know for a fact they had stand-up comedy in Caesarea. We know that. We don't have the name of the stand-up of the comedians, but we know for a fact they had that. Now, I was thinking, what were the jokes they were telling? And just one second. Another fact that we know, that they mocked the Jews. Okay, we know they were mocking the Jews in Caesarea on stage. So I was trying to think, what was their stand-up comedy about? So the first joke that I thought about was that the Jews are very, very lazy people, okay? Because everyone is working 7 days a week. Only the Jews rest on Shabbat, rest on Saturday, again, from the 10 Commandments to keep and remember Shabbat. Saturday, this is a part of their religious life in Judea. Now, I think I mentioned it last week. There were 3 wonders in Judea. a sea that no one can drown in, that's the Dead Sea, a temple with no sculptures, that's the temple in Jerusalem, and a day without work. Okay, so the Jews, probably they made jokes about them being lazy. They also mocked the Jews for eating cold food on their holy day. Okay, why cold food? Because we're not allowed to light fire during Shabbat. So they are very depressing people. They don't eat, I don't know, like barbecue on Shabbat. So this could be another option. Also, they castrate their children. Okay, that's the circumcision that I mentioned. Another thing, again, we know that for a fact that that's what some Roman pagans thought, that the Jews worship pigs. We know that for a fact, okay? We have historians that speaks about Jews worshiping pigs, okay? Although it's, of course, not true. Why did they thought that? Because Jews don't eat pork. They thought, okay, it's because they worship the pigs. So that's probably made another joke. Also, the Jews were considered to be anarchists and anti-civilization altogether. Why? Because they have so many, rituals of their own, and they don't want to assimilate, and they don't want to embrace the wonderful Hellenistic culture. And they're extremely rebellious. Okay, anarchists, like they're rebellious. They revolt against the Greeks. Okay, that's the Hanukkah story. They revolt against King Herod. Later, they will revolt twice against, not twice, even more than that, against Rome, until they were crushed in the second century. And the last thing, the last joke that I want to focus on is that the Jews are misanthropes. Misanthropes. They hate other people. Okay, why did they think that? It's because in the Roman world, in the Roman Empire, you travel from one side of the empire to the other. You meet all kinds of people. You meet all kinds of culture, and then you ask the people, okay, who are your gods? Okay, so people would say, I worship Baal, for example. Okay, your Baal is like our Zeus, and then they would understand what is the local mythology. They would name it. They would name the local gods under the with the Roman name or the Greek name. So, for example, Adonis is actually Adon means Lord, actually, okay, in Hebrew. So there are all kinds of ways that the Greeks, then the Romans tried to compromise somehow culturally with the local pagans, and they did that for the most part. Then they find out about the Jews, and they ask the Jews, what is the name of your gods? Plural, right? Gods. And they said, no, we only have one God. So, okay, what is his name? We cannot tell you, okay, because there is a commandment not to say the name of God in vain, right? And then they say, okay, how does he look like? So he doesn't have any shape or image. Okay, so you don't want to share it? No, I mean, it's the one God, yes. And what about him? What does he do? Oh, he's the best. He does everything. So this is how misanthropes the Jews were, as far, again, as the Romans concerned. They don't share their gods, which was a very, very strange thing at the time. So these are the kind of jokes that they probably had. Now, about the West, okay, how the West was influenced by that, just think about the escapism, okay, just weeks, sometimes months of entertainment. It's kind of, think about the Great Depression in the 20s, okay, people were just going to the movies or doing whatever, looking for some entertainment. So this is this escapism. And I'll say that as far as the Rabbi is concerned, this was the theater, and later on I'm going to talk about the horse races and others. This was really a foul. So they quote from Psalms, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers." This is again how the rabbis explain not to sit with the mockers. So that's again the theater. Good. Let's continue. We're leaving the theater, and let's see some architecture. So in Caesarea, you can see many artifacts. Such as the capitals. Really, you can see a lot of those, these Corinthian capitals just over here. And it's just all over the place, clearly. And I want to show you two very familiar buildings right now. The first one is the Capitol Hill, just over here. It was built in the early 20th century, but clearly you can see that that the design it's not just a random American design. It's coming from some influence, some European influence, you would say. And where is this European influence coming from? From the Greek and Roman tradition. Okay, so the Corinthian capitals, it's in some parts of America, as far as I know, it's called the colonial style, I think. Anyway, the next one is a Supreme Court. You can see again the Corinthian columns and capitals. The design, even the measures, the angles is completely Greek and Roman. So that's the style. So even when it comes to architecture, it comes from this deep influence. Now, in Judaism, there is no architecture in the sense that there are no necessary standards. So Jews, wherever they were in the different, the diaspora, in exile or the diaspora, they just used whatever the local architecture was. But going back to the, let's say, 3rd century, 4th century, both Jews and Christians embraced a secular type of building that now everyone known as the design of churches. Basilica was a secular building in the Roman world. It was serving all kinds of purposes. Usually it was just for, like office building, you can say. And Jews embraced that because it had no religious connotation. So they embraced that to their synagogues, and we found probably 120, 150 synagogues in Israel, all basilica, all in the shape of basilica. And the same thing with the early Christians. They also embraced the basilica as their holy place of prayer, I would say. That's as far as the architecture. Right now, I want to take you to the palace of King Herod. The palace of King Herod. These are just little remains of it. I'm gonna open Google Earth in just a second to show you that. But this is the pool that we saw earlier in the video. So as I'm opening it, I'll just say a few words about the Herodian Palace. Okay, so as I said, King Herod was a very cruel king, really, but a great builder, the great builder of Israel, I would say. And just one second, let me make sure that it opens properly. And he had few palaces in Jerusalem, in Caesarea, and also in Jericho. So for the most part, he probably stayed in Jericho, but every now and then we think that he visited both Jerusalem and Caesarea. Now, when King Herod built Caesarea, he became the agent of the Roman world in Judea. Okay, again, not just politically and militarily, not just he ruled on the spears of the legionnaires, but when he does that, he influenced the entire country culturally. So the rabbis see him as the man again that promoted this cultural invasion. And they had a saying because of that. So I'm quoting from the Talmud right now. They said this: if someone tells you Caesarea and Jerusalem stands, don't believe him. They can't stand together, okay? But if someone tells you Caesarea stands and Jerusalem falls, believe him. If someone tells you Jerusalem falls and Caesarea stands, believe him. So they cannot coexist. This is the idea in the Talmud. They are so different culturally to the point that these two cities cannot stand. When you think about it historically, Caesarea that was built in the in the late 1st century BC, about 25 BC, about 90 years later, Jerusalem was destroyed. Okay, the tension that was created because of the cultural differences and because of the how much the Romans, the commissioners, the high commissioners, how much they exploited it, it could not coexist. So this is again the idea. I don't know what happened with my Google Earth, but let's try that. I think it should work. And I will share my screen.
Itamar, we have a question. We have a couple questions here.
Go ahead, yes, fantastic.
So the question about Caesar
Yeah.
having built, I believe you referenced that he built Caesarea, and did he also build Masada? Can you address that?
Not Caesar, Herod. Herod built
Yes.
that.
Right.
Herod built Caesarea, Herod built Sebastia, Herod built Masada, and many other places.
I think there was some confusion because it got the name Caesarea, that it was
Caesarea,
after Caesar.
yeah,
Right.
to
But
Caesar.
it was after Caesar because of the time period.
I hope I answered the question. I don't know. Did I answer it?
Yes, you did.
Okay. So
You did. I think the person says that you did.
okay. So again, if I didn't, please let me know. Okay.
Any other questions? Maybe there's a couple other questions right now.
My Google Earth finally works. So
Okay.
I don't know what happened with it. It worked. There you go. Okay. Now I'm sharing my screen and you can see that. I have to just admit. Yeah, okay, there you go.
Okay.
So, my friends, I'm taking you now to the palace, the Herodian Palace. Oops. Okay, you can see my screen now. Again, these columns are new from the 90s, but this is where the palace used to be. Okay, many rooms all around it. We found the foundations of these rooms. Okay, we found a well as well, and this is the private palace of King Herod over here. The rooms were just over here on this side and this side and this side. And he had in the middle, he had a pool. This is a carved pool in the sandstone over here. So it's not exactly an infinity pool, but you get the picture. It's just on the Mediterranean, really, really beautiful. By the way, in Masada, he had an infinity pool overlooking the Dead Sea. So this is the Herodian Palace. Now, I want to say how important, I can't stress that enough, how important Caesarea is for Christians. So I'll just just say the different traditions that are associated with Caesarea. It's mentioned in the New Testament quite a few times. So after Jesus' death and resurrection, and after his ascension to heaven, basically the disciples start to preach and perform miracles in different parts of the country. And Peter comes to a place called Lydia, which is near the airport today, and he raised Tabitha from the dead. People hear about him, and they call him to Jaffa, to the old city of Jaffa. And Peter stays with Simon the tanner. When he stayed at Simon the tanner's house, he fell into a trance, and he had a vision that a sheet comes down from the sky. I'll just stop sharing the screen for just 1 second. A sheet came down from the sky with all kinds of crawling animals, non-kosher animals, and a voice told him, "Slay and eat." Okay. Peter says, "I'm a kosher Jew. I cannot do that. I cannot eat the shrimps, calamari, whatever that was." And this sheet goes back up to heaven, descends for the second time, for the third time, and the voice tells him, "What God has cleansed, you won't say it's unclean or impure." Meaning, it's not about the food, actually. It's about the people, okay? Meaning that if I tell you that you can reach out to things that were forbidden or to people that you did not deliver the gospel so far, now you can do that. So far, you were excluding the non-Jews and only including the Jews in the gospel. But the Jews don't listen. So from now on, you basically can address the non-Jews as well. Just after this vision, a delegation from Caesarea knocks on the door of Simon the tanner. They hear that Peter is there, and they tell him, "Cornelius, this Roman centurion, calls you to Caesarea, summons you to Caesarea." Now, where exactly this Cornelius lived, we don't really know, but we do know that right next to the palace of King Herod, we found a kind of a club of officers. The club of the officers, there's actually a mosaic floor that what it says over there. And this is maybe where this Roman centurion, Cornelius, the first converted to Christianity. So I can't stress enough how important this location is. That's number one. A few other traditions, such as Paul was imprisoned here. We actually found a mosaic floor near the palace as well that speaks about the fortune of the guards in the prison. Okay, so it was again maybe a club for the Guards. Philippus lived in Caesarea for a while. Origenus and Eusebius, the two fathers of the church, they write the Hexapella, the translation of the Old Testament to Greek. They wrote it here in Caesarea, and we know for a fact that there were Christians in the 3rd century that were slaughtered in Caesarea or sent to their death by animals in the Hippodrome that we're going to get to in a moment. So altogether, the significance of this place is very important. I'll just say that I want to show you a picture of it actually. After Herod's death, his sons reigned for a little bit, and then we have the commissioners, I would call them, the rulers of Judea, such as Pontius Pilate. So what you see here is a replica of a Latin inscription over here, where in this inscription it says that Pontius Pilate dedicate a temple to Tiberius Caesar here in Caesarea. So we actually found this inscription that indicates the existence of Pontius Pilate in Caesarea. We know for a fact that he lived there, no doubt, and during the high holidays he came to Jerusalem. So for example,
Itamar?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I was wondering if you could clarify Herod the Great and the other Herod, the father and the son, and which one was the one who was relevant in terms of Jesus, and which one built the
They're both relevant.
Caesarea?
Yeah, no, they're both relevant. So Herod the Great, he is the one that built Caesarea, and his son, he had 3 sons that are all named after him. Herod Philippus. So for example, Caesarea Philippi is named after Herod Philippus, one of the sons. Herod Archelaus, and the 3rd Herod, why did I forget his name? Herod Antipas. Okay, Herod Antipas is the bad guy, one of the bad guys. He killed John the Baptist, for example. So when you read the New Testament at the beginning, there is the story about the census. This is the old Herod, Herod the Great. Okay, he is the killer of the innocent. So he killed all the babies of that year, beside of John and Jesus. So this is the older Herod, and then his sons were as cruel as him. So Herod Antipas is the one that killed John the Baptist. Okay, I hope I answered everything. So so that's again about the palace of King Herod. I'm going to do it now real quick. So I want to leave more time for questions. So I'll just say that right next to the palace, there is a latrine. I'll just move away a bit. That's how the latrines, the public latrines look like, okay? It doesn't look very clean, but it was very well maintained, so it was very hygienic. So take a look of how it worked, just a little depiction of it. You would sit together in the public toilet. You had a little stick with a sponge. There is a running water. You can put the sponge in it, clean yourself, throw it away. Then you have another basin with water where you can wash your hands. Okay, so it was very, very clean and hygienic. And even the word hygiene comes from the Greek goddess of cleanliness or purity, Hagia. Okay, so over here I'm showing you just a part of the sculpture of Asclepius and Hagia, his daughter, and you can see they're holding the snake that represents a medicine. So today in the West, in most pharmacies, you'll have the snake as a symbol of the pharmacy of medicine. It's not a coincidence. It's coming from the Greek mythology, the Greek and Roman mythology with Hagia, hygiene. So it's even in the words we use. So just a little info. I'm going now to the Hippodrome, to the horse races, which is right next to the palace. Just to show you again the size of it. It's about 200 meters, 600 feet. In this measure in Latin, it's called stadia. So stadium that we use today comes from this particular measure. So the horse race is a brutal game. The Jews absolutely hated that because it's murder. Basically, you see people getting killed for your entertainment. So it's absolutely against the 10 Commandments. So I'm showing you just a reenactment, I would say, of reenactment in Caesarea. That's what you see over here, the Hippodrome in Caesarea. A few years ago, they did this for entertainment, for probably on one of the holidays. But again, these horse races are brutal. Okay, so you can see the quadriga, the four horses chariot. That's what they use, so it's very, very powerful. And people got killed during the race, okay? So this is my favorite Ben-Hur, not too dangerous, not too intimidating. But again, back then, it was absolutely brutal, and people got killed. And the ones that won became multi-millionaires, really multi-millionaires. They got pension for life and became very famous and very influential. Some of them became politicians. So I mentioned that actors became politicians. I mentioned now that athletes became politicians. I'm sure it resonates with things that we are familiar with today. Let's continue. In the same hippodrome that I just showed you, they also had at some point in history, something like the Colosseum. So real gladiators were fighting. I'll just show you mosaics, different mosaics from Italy that shows wild beasts eating a prisoner. So that was a very common way to punish prisoners, but also Christians and Jews. After the different revolts, Christians and Jews were thrown to the arena to be killed by wild animals. So some gladiators were fighting animals. They have names for every competition like that. But I want to focus now on something that is very common and famous today. You can see this gladiator, he just defeated the other ones. He's stepping on them, and now he's looking at the crowd, but he's about to look at the governor over here, okay? The governor over here. The governor is looking at the crowd. If the crowd liked the other gladiator and they don't want him to kill him, they would say, thumbs up. Okay, we're all familiar with that. But if they didn't like the way he fought, they would say, thumbs down, let's kill him. Okay, so even think about Facebook today, like and dislike. This is totally something that we have in modern societies in the West today. This idea of thumbs up, thumbs down. This is coming from back then. Olympics, okay, the athletes were all naked, again, admiring the human body. During these sports events, I'll just say, they also had cheerleaders. So cheerleaders is an institution that started in Rome. So if you're not familiar with it, there you go. So I hope it's new. I'll just say again, Christians and Jews were sent to the arena. We know of these, this was a common practice. One of the reasons why the Christians were sent to the arena is because most of them are coming from pagan origin, and they converted into Christianity, and they betrayed their fathers. Okay, they betrayed their fathers' heritage and became these Christians. Okay, so in the early days of Christianity, before the Rome converted as an empire, it was a very, very tough time, especially in the 3rd century under Diocletian. It was absolutely horrific, and the Christians were persecuted, and martyrs died left and right. Okay, let's continue now to the Bathhouse. I'll do it real quick. I'll just say Bathhouse is an institution not only to get yourself clean, but it's also the place to get pleasure, and I'm sure you know what I'm referring to, and also the place to do business. You basically can, tell your secrets to your colleagues over there, be associated with politicians in the Bathhouse. So this is the best way, to reveal your secrets. The equivalent for it today, the way I see it, is the golf course, I guess. So this is again where you can have your business.
The sauna.
Yeah, the sauna, exactly, or sauna. So this is also, again, I mentioned earlier that the Hippodrome and the gladiator is, it's against the 10 Commandments, the murder. In the case of the Bathhouse, I would say it's against idolatry and to covet your friend's wife, etc., etc. I'm going to run real quick 2 places. The first one is the Cardo. the Cardo, the main street of Caesarea. It has shops, it has businesses, it has lovely mosaics over there. But the Cardo, again, the heart of the city, the purpose of it is the taxes. Okay, that's the real purpose of it. You make money, people make money, and they pay taxes. That's how they got Herod wealthy. Now, I'll just say something about the Cardo and the markets in Rome. I would call it the IKEA effect of the Roman Empire, standardizing everything, okay? So the measures, the grid of the city, altogether, that made a Roman citizen coming from one city to the next very familiar with the city. Once you know where the Cardo is, where the main street is, he knows exactly where is the Bulle, the city council. He knows where the Bathhouse is, he doesn't know where the entertainment is. He just knows his way around. Unlike today that we have to look in TripAdvisor and we have to look in maps, blah, blah, blah. So this is, again, the IKEA effect of the Roman world. I'm continuing now real fast. Oh, by the way, just as an anecdote, this mosaic in Greek, it says, if you don't want to fear the authority, just do good and you'll be praised. So I can just imagine this is the waiting room for the in the tax chamber. So this is, again, just a little anecdote. Let's continue real fast to the port. I mentioned all about the port. In the port, in maritime archaeology, by the way, we keep finding objects such as these. You can see these bronze broken statues. Most scholars suggested this is this cargo was a part of, this cargo was meant to ship somewhere else to be melted again and reuse the bronze. So even recycling is a concept they had also back then. And I will wrap up with the flags. So I want to show you this symbol of the Roman legions. Okay, it's a very militant society, very militant empire altogether. And that was their the Roman eagle, okay, just over here. Now, you can see what happened with this eagle. In the Byzantine era, when the Roman Empire moved from Rome to Constantinople, today's Istanbul in Turkey, they had a two-headed eagle looking at the east and the west. Okay, the west is towards the Roman Europe, the east is towards the Middle East, holding a sword and the globe with a cross. Okay, this is the Byzantine Empire that rules and also serves God. That's one thing. Then you'll see the same eagle and the flag of the Habsburgs, Austro-Hungarian Empire. You'll see the same eagle, guys, at the flag and the symbol of Russia, and you'll see that in the American eagle as well. So again, these undercurrents of the Roman world and the Roman culture is these undercurrents are going very, very deep, influenced a lot of our mind and our imagination. And I just try to expose how deep these connections. I also try to show you how much the Roman world and civilization contradicts the values and the belief system of the Jews, and that explains why the Jews revolt against them, ultimately to its destruction, the destruction of Judea, and the Jews were exiled, and that's how I actually opened. I'll just say that one of the important rabbis that got killed in Caesarea is Rabbi Akiva. He was killed in Caesarea, was buried next to it in a terrapilon. That's how it's called, the terrapilon of Caesarea. We have an idea of where that is. So this is Rabbi Akiva, and that's again why I grew my beard. I mentioned that earlier. The last thing I'll say is that Christianity did not succeed in Jerusalem until very late, until later on. Jews still ruled in Jerusalem in the next decades after Jesus died and his risen. And the reason that Christianity succeeded, and when you read the epistles by Paul, you can see where are the communities are. They are next to the port cities, okay? Because you can create a lovely network between the different ports. The people that live by the beach are more open for commerce, more open for new ideas, and more open for new products. And they tend to be more liberal and more open for all of that. When you look at maps today of how the voting is going on, both in Israel and in America, you can see where the liberals live. So where you see where the blue is on the coast, and you can see the same thing in Israel in different ways. And the people who live in in the hinterland, let's call it, they usually tend to be more conservative. And this is a talk that could last forever, but that's how I wanted to conclude it. Christianity succeeded by the coast, and it's opened up to the Roman world. Paul, his epistles, it clearly indicates he was working in these communities that live by the beach. And that's how Christianity spreaded in the early days, in the 1st and the 2nd century. Thank you. Let's open it for questions.
Thank you, Itamar.
Welcome.
That was very, very insightful. I think we'll have some questions. Anybody want to start? George, you always have a question.
I just want to say, how many connections you have drawn really to life today, like the ones you're concluding comments right now among the many, the different applications, the depth of your understanding of, and we're learning about the Greco-Roman society in relation to, the Christian origins and to Judaism, understanding everything in these social, cultural, political, and even as you just mentioned right now, geographical context really allows one to understand, allows us to understand and appreciate the dynamics of what's going on when we read something like the New Testament or the emergence of rabbinic Judaism. Certainly, they just thank you for providing all of that, just wonderful, very educative information, very integrative, that offers so much understanding by bringing all those contexts together.
Happy to.
I'm also thinking about infinity pool, by the way. That sounds like a great idea by the coast.
Yes, absolutely. Not in the case of Caesarea, but in Masada, he had an infinity pool overlooking. Really, like we found it. The archaeologists have found it. Yes. Thank you, George. It was awesome. Thank you very much. Yes.
So this looks like Lindsay's going to go next time. Right, Lindsay?
Yeah, and I went before.
Mm-hmm.
I went on one of those, the first time I ever went to Israel, I went on one of those tours that you go and stay a couple of hours. And this has opened up a whole new world about Caesarea. And we did a pretty in-depth study on it, but nothing like what you've told us. So that was fabulous. Thank you.
Welcome, Lindsay. It was just 1 hour, as you know.
Yeah, but I think you could do it for 2 weeks.
Any other questions? Who else might have a question?
Can you tell
Elaine.
me?
Hi.
How are you today?
Good. How are you, Elaine?
The distance between, we went to Masada later in our tour from Caesarea.
Sure.
What's the distance in terms of how close or how far are they?
Between where? Jerusalem and Caesarea?
No, Masada.
Masada. So between Caesarea and Jerusalem, it's 80 miles. And between Jerusalem and Masada, driving today, it's, let me do the math, it's about 100 kilometers. Yeah, about 100 kilometers, about 70 miles. So 150 miles, that would be, how much it is.
Yeah, Jerusalem's essentially the halfway point, about an hour and a half to each place.
Something like that, yeah.
A little under.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Elisa, because
yes.
It will be easier if you read the chat box. I can read it.
I am. I have one of the questions that Malcolm just asked is, are the pictures that you showed some people and some of the photos in Caesarea, was there anybody specific?
My travel
family? Yeah. They were just, I assume they were just tourists.
Yes. And Peggy is raising her hand for a while, actually. Peggy, if you can open the microphone. I'm sorry. You can open the microphone. Maybe ask me. Peggy. Yes. Go ahead, dear. Yes.
Okay. Can you comment a little bit on Herod's religious background? I know I thought he was Jewish, but over the time of the many Herods, was there one who was less Jewish than others?
Okay. In the Roman world, there was a saying about Herod. It's better to be Herod's swine than Herod's son. Okay? Because he kept kosher, but he killed his sons. You see? So he's absolutely cruel and brutal king. He didn't care at all. I mean, he wanted to rule. He actually managed to. He ruled in Judea for 33 years. Trust me, to rule in Israel, in modern Israel, democratic Israel, it takes a lot to rule this country in the Middle East. You can see how unstable this region is. Yes, so he was absolutely cruel. Now, their background, I'm talking about Herod's family, Herod's, let's say, grandfather, okay? They were Edomites. Okay? They were coming from a family of Edomites. I don't want to get to the geography. It's generally like in the southern part of the country. These Edomites were forcibly converted by one of the Maccabees kings. I'm talking about, again, the Hasmonite family, the Maccabees that during Hanukkah, they kicked out the Greeks,
Yes.
established the country, and there's like a whole dynasty. One of them, John Hyrcanus, that's the name of the guy. He was a king. He forcibly converted the Edomites. He told them basically, either you leave or you convert to Judaism. Okay, it's the only time in the Jewish history that there was a forced conversion. It never happened before or after. So one of the families that converted were Herod's family, again, before he was born. And they became the officials or the diplomats in the region of Edomea. They were like the governors, that would be the right word, I think, the governors of Edomea for the Hasmonite family, for John Hyrcanus, later his successors. That's what he did. So that's how they became involved in politics. I didn't specify exactly how they kicked out the Maccabees and basically took over Judea, but that's a different story that I don't want to get into right now, but they got it. And they are Jewish. They're not the best Jews in the sense of, you know, high moral values, appreciation of life, okay? They were brutal and they killed people like crazy. They ruled under the spears of the Romans. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Itamar, we have a couple of questions over here. Reverend Georgia is asking about the mosaics and the horse chariots. And then Lisa Felix has a question after that.
Okay, so about the mosaics that I showed you, these are all from Italy. It's not in the, I mean, a lot of the, like this one, I guess that's what you meant. This is all from Italy, Pompeii, other places. It's not in Caesarea. In Caesarea, we do have lots of mosaics, such as, for example, this one. You can see this is from near the Bathhouse. No, not near. This is from the Bathhouse. There are other mosaics that are even more beautiful. This is from Byzantine Caesarea. It's not exactly in the site that I showed you. It's just maybe a mile or two outside of it. But this is the Bird's mosaic. It's a very famous mosaic just outside the archaeological site of Caesarea, the Bird mosaic. So we do have lovely mosaics in Caesarea as well.
Yeah, the reason I asked was because I thought the people had an interesting look. They look a little bit African, some of the folks that were portrayed in those mosaics, and that's why I asked.
Okay, maybe. Okay.
And Elise Askenazi has a question about, can you please briefly explain how Caesarean society fell?
Caesarean society?
How it fell. Why the society fell apart at a certain point?
I don't
why
think
it was destroyed.
The right answer. It
the end of Caesarea.
The end of Caesarea, okay. We're talking about later period of time. So in the 7th century, the Muslims took over the entire country. They turned Caesarea simply to a Muslim country. The temple that later the temple they had over there that turned into a church turned into a mosque, okay, during the Muslim period. And the full destruction of Caesarea actually happened after the Crusades. So I'm talking about deep into the medieval times. So it was 13th century. Now I'm talking about. Now the reason Caesarea was destroyed is because the Mamluks, the Muslim dynasty that ruled the country at that point, did not want to have any option for the Christian crusaders to invade from the coast. So they said, we're going to destroy all the cities and all the fortifications on the coastline of Israel, okay? Then no one could establish his reign in one of these fortresses. So that's what they did. They destroyed Caesarea again in the 13th century. And for the next, 500 years, there's nothing going on over there. There's like a little Bosnian village, nothing to, there were some Bosnian refugees in the Ottoman period that were settled over there, but nothing too serious. Like it's very, very minor activity over there. Yes.
Here's Pastor Cliff is asking, where did Herod get his flair for construction or architecture? And was he trained, or did he just hire skilled people? Good question, Pastor.
Wow. Okay. Herod was interested in power, and he understood that the power is with the Romans. He understood that if he wants to be an efficient governor, he has to get their support. He was an efficient governor, but he understood if he wants to rule for a very long time, he needs their support. He needs the mercenaries and the Roman legionaries to rule in Judea. So he just built like crazy, he taxed like crazy, he enslaved like crazy, and he impressed all the elite of the Roman world. First Augustus, later Mark Agrippa. Mark Agrippa was like the second in command in the Roman world during that time. So Mark Agrippa absolutely loved Herod, and they were good friends. Later his sons were not as efficient as he was. Maybe they were not as cruel as he was. So this flair for construction, again, he is the great builder of Israel, you could say. Just think about the top sites in Israel: Jerusalem, the Western Wall of the Temple Mount, okay, Masada, Caesarea, this is all him. Add to that Caesarea Philippi, that was built by his son, Tiberias, built by his son, Sebastia, built by Herod the Great. So he said, I will be remembered and I will rule and people will remember me. He wanted to eternalize his name, and he was remembered, as we know, but not as a good person, but as a horrible, horrific tyrant, or despot. Yes. I hope that answers it. I mean, yeah, okay.
Itamar, thank you.
Good.
Again, thank you so much. And to all of you who joined in, again, thank you so much for taking the time. We are coming up with a calendar, as I said I think most of you got the email, of a number of programs coming up. I actually am going to send a survey because there's a couple of ideas of different types of content to put into this. One suggestion was actually to visit, along with learning about the Jewish roots of Christianity and learning about some of the sites, was also to take a look at modern Israel, things like perhaps visiting a moshav or going into the Bible Lands Museum and really studying some of the artifacts there and putting that in context to today and to the roots of Christianity. So I will send a survey about that, about some of the topics and some of the things that we're thinking about doing, and I'd love to have your input. In the meantime, just to kind of reiterate, if you found today's program interesting, would love to have your contribution so we can continue to move forward with our quality programming with Itamar. And I have a PayPal, we have a PayPal here, so there's I guess you can see the address, whatever you can do is great. So I hope everybody has a really good and healthy week and slowly is able to kind of get their lives back little by little. I know this isn't going to end anytime soon, but I feel like I found a family here, and I really appreciate everybody kind of joining in and your questions and your lovely words, your support. So.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Itamar. You're the best.
Best
partner anybody could hope for.
Elisa, I'll just say that one of the directors of in the Bible Land Museum, she was with us. Yael.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
I know.
Very good. So fantastic, guys! It was a pleasure again to have you all. I told you I'm going to be a megalomaniac and cover in 1 hour all these things, and I'm still shocked that I actually made it. There's much to talk about Caesarea, really. I mean, this is an unbelievable site in its importance and significance, not just as a Roman city, but also in the context of Judaism and Christianity, and the clash, meeting point, and also a clash between all these cultures or way of thought. So this happened in Caesarea. And again, it was lovely, and I'm looking forward for the next time. We will inform you, Elisa will inform you about
next week, and hopefully the Galilee. We're looking at the Galilee.
Yeah, we think about the Galilee. That's correct, exactly.
And thank you for bringing us together in such a rich and comprehensive education, really.
That's a pleasure.
And as a community, as an online community of learners, and pilgrims, thank you so much, both of you.
Yes, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, both of you, and it's tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill.
Shalom.
Thank you, Jill.
Shalom, shalom.
Take care.
Shalom, lehitro.
So we're saying goodbye. I'm going to end this meeting again. Hopefully.
I wanted to ask: Is Linda on? I'm not sure if I.
Linda?
Is there somebody? I didn't see. She.
Linda.
I'm not. No. Okay. Maybe she was on earlier. Okay. Nope.
Very good. That's all.
Well, goodbye, everybody, and please stay in touch and let me know if you have any feedback. Feel free to email. Stay healthy and have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Thank you very much.
You too.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. And
Bye.
this meeting.
Everybody.
Thank you.